Thank you for coming to tonight's screening of My Friends, the Comedians. Please ensure that you have your cell phone silenced. Enjoy the show.
Hello, fellow joke enthusiasts, comedy connoisseurs, and champions of chuckle. Welcome back to the show. And if you're new here, my name is Jacob Marscola, and this is My Friends, the Comedians, a podcast where I sit down with a friend and discuss the mysterious, delirious, and unserious realm of comedy. Sitting across from me is a friend of mine who just so happens to be a comedian. She served on the exec board of my club, Ridiculum, as the vice president, is the first alum that I have on my show. I did a lot with improv and stand-up in the 2 short years that she was in the club, and I'm excited to have her on. Welcome, Siobhan Dillon.
Yay, I'm so happy to be here.
Super excited to have you.
Champion of chuckles. Oh my goodness.
Do you like the intro?
Oh yeah.
Intro's been pretty popular. I'm excited about it.
Well, I'm glad it's been popular.
Yeah.
That's great.
Popular with the 3 people I've recorded with, actually. Right. No one really listens. It's really just the friends, which I enjoy.
So actually, I started listening.
Awesome.
And I had it on as my nighttime rewind.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got terrified because I was like, I cannot have Jacob talking to me as I fall asleep. That's going to induce nightmares.
Yeah, was it Owen or Kevin's episode?
It was Kevin's
episode. So that was especially weird, just to have my voice, Kevin's voice, just kind of becoming your sleep.
Yeah, sleep demons.
Yeah.
So had to cut that off, but gonna be listening to the rest of these soon. I just need to find I know it's gonna be great when I have the free time. Actually, that's what I meant to do. I meant to listen to it on my car ride, but then, anyways, maybe I'll listen to it on the way home.
Take your time. We're slow releasing, so you're not gonna fall behind. No, this isn't one semester. It's not twice a week releasing. I can't do that to myself. Not anymore. You
and Andrew were psychotic about that.
Yeah. I liked how consistent we were, but man, I wasn't even the one editing, and it was stressful. So now being the sole creator, producer, editor of this whole thing, I could not do that too. I don't know how he did. He was a 9th semester senior, so he had the time, I guess.
Yeah, he definitely had the time, but the willpower is what really amazed me.
Honestly, it's the willpower, because I do have time to do stuff, but I would rather be doing other. I don't want to sit down at an Audacity file for 5 hours straight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Honestly, Jacob, you allegedly have the time. You are the biggest procrastinator that I know.
So stuff's changed. I am recently very busy and less procrastinating. Still a little bit. But I'm still a procrastinator.
A new man here.
Yeah, a little bit. It might also just be that I realize that I have to graduate soon. So it's kind of it's a bit of a pressure thing, but I like it. It's good.
Don't graduate, kids. Don't do it.
Don't do it.
It's a scary world out there.
Is it? Yeah. How's the world doing for you?
The world is not nice.
No?
I don't like her. No. Oh my God. Having to pay bills, having to be an adult. My next big battle is going to have to be figuring out healthcare. Luckily, I'm still on my parents' insurance, but oh my God, I have to figure that out for myself. And tax season, I can't. I'm just a girl.
What an exciting time to be thinking about healthcare, mid-election season. What a fun time to be thinking about that.
Yeah.
Super fun for you. Super glad to have you on the show. I'm glad you're here. Before we get into your comedy journey and talking about the effects that comedy has had on you, doing the comedy club for the amount of time that you did it here, I want to ask you the question I've been asking every guest so far. If your personality, summed up entirely, was a book on a coffee table, a real book that exists that you might know, might have read, might enjoy, if your personality was a coffee table, what's your coffee table book?
That's a really great question.
Thank you.
I want to say mine would be some dramatic what not to do in life, a little series, but then it would have little nuggets of gold of wow, this is really insightful, but most of it will be don't get a nicotine addiction at the age of 14, you'll regret it.
So how to fight addiction?
Addiction counseling with Siobhan. Yes.
That's awesome. I like it. That's what. All right. You've solidified it in the lore of the show. Are you cool with your submission?
Yeah.
All right.
You know what?
Absolutely. Mine, if you're curious, I have a book that I'll say it anyway. I host the show. I have a book. I forget. I should really, because for the past 4 episodes, I have forgotten the name of the book every time. But it's a book about the history of improv comedy. So that sums up a lot of me already, but I have yet to read a single book of it, a single word of it. I have yet to read. It's just nice. I like it, and I have it, and I haven't read a single word. And so that also fits my personality, because I don't like reading.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're not like a good, let me just spend my time reading a book.
No.
Like, I have 5 minutes here. You're a very go person.
Yeah, I can't really sit down, and I can do it with a podcast. I can but I also have to be doing other things too. I've been thinking about my brain recently, and you know how sometimes people go, I might have ADHD. I've been thinking about that. I don't know why.
So
really thinking about it lately. I don't know.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So I was diagnosed as an adult with ADHD. So all of my life, my little quirks that I was I'm just quirky, I'm not like other girls. Right. Turns out all of those are symptoms of ADHD. So my bouncing out of a seat is an ADHD symptom. So you might have it.
The only thing is that stories that I've heard from my friends who have gotten themselves diagnosed with ADHD after thinking that they had it is because they've said that they think that something was hindering their work or their ability to be productive. It's not so much that. I noticed that my brain, like you said, is going a million miles an hour sometimes, but not in a way that's really restraining me or any way. I will be in class learning about economics, and then I will quickly do something for Ridiculum, and then I will go check an email. It's I don't want to say, I'm so good at multitasking, but I almost can't help myself but multitask, and at the same time maybe listening to a podcast while doing all this. I don't know. So I'll consider. Maybe I'll talk to a person about that.
Talk to a professional.
Yeah.
One thing about me is that I love to diagnose people with stuff.
But you're not a professional.
Honestly, with the amount of illnesses I've got, I might as well be.
Might as well diagnose. Yeah, I think it'll work out, actually, if we just talk about it right now.
Yeah, exactly. Dude, I have meds in my backpack. I'll give you some Adderall.
Yeah, after the show, I'll just try it out.
Just kidding, everybody.
Yeah, for a disclosure, even if I do end up, we need to disclose. Probably not, guys.
Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you for entertaining my question and talking about a possible mental illness that I have.
Yeah.
I want to get into your comedy journey. This show is about talking about my friends who have done comedy, played with comedy, been a comedian at some point in their life, and talking about what that journey was. What's very interesting for me, and much like the other guests that I've had, as far as I know, though you could tell me that I'm wrong, I think I witnessed and viewed, for the most part, what I know and what is your entire comedy journey so far.
Yeah, you have been. You've been there since the very beginning, which I think kind of really besides, Owen and Kevin.
I was going to say, you mean of the people that I've also seen?
Yeah, but
Owen, well, I'm also thinking of you, me, Owen. Is there anyone else that you can think of that was at that first practice that all of us have witnessed almost the entirety, except you haven't seen the last 2 years or so?
Julie and Georgia.
Yes, Julie and Georgia.
Oh,
I can't wait to have them on. I got to get them on.
Yeah, they were a huge part of my comedy.
Yeah, I would so I want to hear about everything. I want to hear, even though I've seen a lot of it, the listeners don't know as much about it maybe. Talk about the people you met, everything. Talk from the beginning, whether it was involvement fair or probably not involvement fair, because this is interesting. So far, the perspective I've gotten is people that I know started with the involvement fair. But did you hear about this Ridiculum from other people, or what was that like? How did you start and get to a practice?
Yeah, so it's actually funny. I learned there was an improv group on campus my freshman year because my ancients professor, she said to me, she was after one class, she emailed me, and she was like, you have a quick wit and an accessible sense of humor. You should do improv. And I was like, oh my God, who does she think I am? Why would I ever do improv comedy? That's so embarrassing. And I was like, God, no.
Why would I do that?
Yeah, I was like, oh, so that's what you think of me as an improv comedian? Dramatic irony for later on, of course.
Yes.
But then I met Becca Fink through Chi Omega, or sorority.
That's right. Oh, yeah, you were in the same sorority. That's right.
Yeah. We went on a little, sister date, which is when, new people meet, upperclassmen and, decide who their big is. We went on a sister date, and she told me she was in improv. And like, she was like, oh my God, it's so stupid. Like, it's so silly. It's so funny. Like, it's not like what you think it would be. And I was like, oh, so dope. And I was thinking about like following up with her. And then the next thing we know, we get sent home for COVID.
Oh, yeah. So that's crazy.
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh. So I didn't realize that you joined earlier than I thought. Oh, no, you didn't join yet, though.
No.
You were told about it.
But there's like this alternate universe where COVID doesn't happen. I hit Becca up and I'm like, hey, like, I'd love to come to a practice. And I joined Ridiculum second semester freshman year.
Wow.
Which would have been really strange and probably altered like a lot of people's course of life.
Very interesting.
Yeah,
wow, that's an interesting what if that could have occurred. So you had to wait that amount of time that like prevented you, and then year that I came to Villanova was the year that you were like, I can now finally join.
Yeah, so then my junior year, Julia and Georgia, who are other comedians, they were good friends of mine, and they came to my room one day and were like, you'll never believe what we're signing up for. Like, we met these people, the most bizarre people at the involvement fair. Like, you'll love them. You have to join. And again, I was like, no fucking way. Mm-hmm. And then I was like, no, like, I have nothing going on. I might as well. I was also like a little manic at the time, so I was like, oh my God, this is so good for my plot. Mm-hmm. I think I showed up to the first practice like slightly tipsy because I was like, I can't do this sober.
In true Siobhan fashion.
Yeah. I used to bring shooters. Mm-hmm. But yeah.
Noel has since carried on the tradition.
Thank God. Yeah. I loved to pregame improv sometimes, but then I got power, and it was like more like, this girl shouldn't be drunk.
Yeah,
she has to run practice.
Yeah, I got to introduce the show before the show happens, and maybe I should be able to talk. Man. Yeah. No, maybe we got to find someone after Noel's gone, after we're gone, to carry on this tradition.
I know.
We got to find a shooter. Maybe we'll make that an official executive position.
Honestly, it should be.
Keeper of the shooters.
Yeah, lucky shooters before improv shows.
I think, if I'm correct, your first show, which was also my first show, I think you offered me a shooter, and I think I took it.
Yeah, so one of my good friends, Jill, who is also in Ridiculum, she kind of like was like my guiding star for comedy. And before my first show, she like pulls me aside and she's like, I do shooters before every show.
So Jill started this.
You have to do it. Yes, this is like a long legacy. It wasn't just me. She's like, you have to do this with me. And I was like, oh, what am I going to do? Say no? Had a disgusting shot of vodka in the Connolly Center bathroom. And then was like, all right, I'm ready to rock and roll. I think we had an extra one that we handed to Jacob.
Yeah, I took it.
Yeah.
I got to say, because I bring that up because good luck. And I felt all right about the first show. And I was like, this is great. This is awesome. It was also like I had already it was college started. I was like, I had tried alcohol before, but then I was like, these newer older people that are in the club, I gotta it wasn't like a peer pressure thing. It was like I gotta just do it. I gotta like I gotta do the thing. And then I did it and didn't feel great for like a few minutes, and then was like, all right, ready to go.
Yeah. No, that's the thing with shots. It's like, it does not go down easy.
It's not fun. It's fun after.
No, That's
what it is. Yeah.
But like liquid courage is a real thing, and not to promote alcoholism on this, but like one shot to, perform your comedic best, it works like magic.
Yeah, and also like I was in like, I think I was in like 2, maybe 3. Like I was in a lot of games in that show, so I wasn't worried that like, It was fun. I like that it's a tradition. I didn't realize that Jill had started that, because you are of Jill lineage in terms of Ridiculum.
In the lore.
And I don't know if we've said Noel is of that lineage as well. I'm not exactly sure, but it would make sense if he fell in that line.
Especially now that I'm hearing that he brings shooters. Like
he doesn't do it every show, but he still will do it sometimes.
Okay.
So.
All right, I got to work on that with him, because I have a real issue if he's not doing it every show.
Yeah, he's not being very consistent.
No, and that's really disrespectful to me and Jill and all that have come before us.
Yeah.
So we're going to have a serious conversation about this.
Honestly, a little messed up for sure. So moving back from our first show first, what was first practice like for you? I've been curious about this. I guess I'm curious about first improv practice and also first stand-up meeting. Or did you not start going to stand-up for a little bit?
I didn't start going to stand-up for a little bit. But so first improv practice, I was like a little bit nervous. a little bit drunk around all of these new people, and they were really good at improv. And I was like, what the fuck? But then I was like, okay, you know what? Like, I can do this too. So I actually got up for a few games my first practice. But it was like super cool because everyone was super like accepting, and like it wasn't like, oh my God, you're the new person here. Let me explain all of these games to you. You in specifically because you're new, like ostracize you. It was very much like, oh, everyone's new, everyone's learning. This is how this game goes. Let's all do it together and let's have fun. And it was so much fun that then the next week I was like, I have to come back. And then I learned that there was 2 practices a week, and I was like, I get to do this twice a week? No way.
The twice a week, when I heard that, was like, no way. Because I think the first meeting that I went to was a stand-up meeting. I was like, I don't know why. Initially, I thought that stand-up was going to be my kick. Turns out not as much as improv. But I went to stand-up, and then they were like, come to improv. And then at improv on Sunday, they were like, come back. And 3 times I get to do this, whatever this is, in the week. That's awesome. Yeah.
I have had like commitment issues my entire life. Like, I was a really good athlete growing up, but like just kind of flaked out of all of it. So when I called my mom and told her that I was doing improv comedy and stand-up comedy 5 hours a week, she's like, who are you?
Yeah.
You've never been so committed to something.
Definitely. I'm curious about like when because you had joined other things before you joined Ridiculum. You were halfway through college. It's not as if that was the first thing you joined. But for me, the perspective was I didn't think I would be so involved with like activities or organizations in college. And I super am at this point.
Yeah.
So like, what did you think coming into college? Like, were you already pretty involved in other stuff, even though you had this like commitment issue thing that you were worried about? Were you like, I'm going to do stuff for sure?
Yeah, there was definitely that. But also like the kind of overcast on all of this was that it was COVID during like second semester of my freshman year through beginning of my junior year. So it was like all of the activities were pretty non-committal. So I was in a sorority, I was in Blue Key, but like all of those were like, okay, we're going to have virtual meetings online or like this and that. I did give tours. So I guess that was commitment, but I hated them.
I didn't realize that you were Blue Key at one point.
I was so Blue Key.
Wow.
Yeah, like your girl can walk backwards like nobody's business. That's like all that I remember from it. It was like such a great workout, to be honest. And yeah, I guess I got some kids to come here or whatever. But for the most part, like I was involved in theory, but not really in practice. So then when like Ridiculum came along, it was like, no, I'm going to get super involved in this.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. I'm glad that it's super exciting to hear that you were like, there's no way I can be involved in things. I have the inability to. And that a comedy club was what you decided to stick to, because that's really fun. I mean, you mentioned the what if thing. I was going to ask this later on in the show, but you mentioned it and I don't want to forget it because I didn't even think about the fact that there's a possibility, and I didn't know that you had already known about Ridiculum before COVID sent you home. One of the questions I was gonna ask later, but I want to ask now was, I'm gonna pull up the exact wording because I want to make sure that I'm saying this right. So like, talking specifically about like you were someone in the time performing comedy that was like shorter compared to most. Like you were like as in like 2 years as opposed to. Sorry, what was your interpretation of that weird phrasing of a question?
I was like shorter height, shorter will to live, shorter. What's going on here?
No. So like your time performing comedy was shorter compared to others in Ridiculum, given that you joined junior year. I'd love to know if you believe first year and sophomore year Siobhan would have been equally as embracing to comedy, but that's part of the question. But now I'm hearing that like you were maybe ready to join. You were ready, like, so I guess that question, but also like how would it have been different? What would that trajectory have looked like had you been able to, let's say COVID doesn't happen?
I was definitely like thinking I was like cool girl hot shit those like 2 years prior to joining Ridiculum. Ridiculum definitely humbled me.
I love a good, and everyone's got it. Everyone's got I got humbled about halfway through and I became a better person.
And I became a better person for it. Absolutely. Like, I'm less cunty now, even though I'm still, like, kind of cunty.
It's still there.
Yeah, like, she's definitely still there. I mean to Jacob all the time. I haven't bullied you on this episode yet.
You haven't.
Yeah,
There's still opportunity to.
Yeah,
you're absolutely welcome.
Thank you so much. But I would say that, like, I don't think I would have been as involved. I think it would have been definitely weird because there were some other, like, people prior to me being in the club, so I don't know how I would have meshed with them. Not saying that I wouldn't have, but, like, I feel like I came in at such a, like, good time, and I've said this to a lot of people that, like, we wouldn't have been friends if I came in earlier. Because, like, I wasn't ready for Ridiculum, and Ridiculum wasn't ready for me,
yeah,
you know?
Absolutely.
So, like, I do think it was, like, stars aligned perfectly. Julie and Georgia came to my room and told me, you'll never believe what's going to happen. And I joined Ridiculum, and, like, honestly, the best part of my college career.
That's awesome to hear. Yeah, I think about, you mentioned, again, Julia and Georgia. I think about, like, in my mind, you all fit, like, a same pocket. It was a trio that existed in that. I can't imagine that trio exists if you were already in the club before they decided to join. I'm also curious, I mean, I hear from your answer, but, like, you wouldn't have been as involved, or do you think that if you had joined earlier, you might have, like, fizzled out and decided to leave before you should have joined or something? Or would it just been you maybe get involved eventually, or with that time in the club, would you have just taken a little longer to get a little more involved the way you were?
I think I just would have been, like, annoying as hell. And, like, I don't know. I think maybe I would, like, do it sometimes, or, like, have gone to a practice and been like, oh no, these freaks. I don't know, because, like, freshman year Siobhan is so much different than, like, the Siobhan right now and the Siobhan that joined Ridiculum as a junior. So, like, I like to think that I would have been just as involved, but, like, I don't think that I would be. I think it would have been kind of, like, maybe fizzled out, but, like, maybe have gotten it there. I really don't know. I think it would have been fizzled out, honestly.
Man, thank God for COVID, which is a sentence that has been said probably multiple times by people, but never thought that would be said.
No, exactly.
Isn't it insane the fact that the worst thing in the world ever happened, but like some good things come from it? That's insane. That's an insane concept to me. That is impossible in my mind.
No, honestly, because I think, like, for a lot of people, I know I can say for myself, like, it taught me a lot about myself, because it was such a time of, like, introspection that, like, coming out the other end, I was like, oh my God, like, what am I doing with my life? Like, definitely more in touch with myself, and definitely, like, fucking off the walls afterwards, because I was, like, cooped up little animal, and then I was like, ooh, it's time to be insane.
I need to interact with people in case I don't get this chance again.
Yeah, I know, like, hey, be my friend, please. Thank you so much. I haven't talked to people in, like, months.
Yeah, I think about that too, of, like, yeah, especially I can't imagine, like, I salute anyone, including you, who either started college or was in college during. I can't imagine, just knowing myself and knowing my mental activity and things I've gone through during college, like, I can't imagine the basket case I would have been at any point in my college career had COVID hit and, like, basically cost me roughly 2 years. It's an insane thing to think about, and I don't know if I would have survived. It's insane that's like, sometimes I will just look back and think on that and be like, how did people do it? How?
Yeah. And I mean, like, I think the same goes for, like, me as far as, like, people in high school. I would have been like, what the hell? Like, all of it. It's insane that we all survived it, and, like, snaps to all of us for doing that, because, like, that's one of, like, the hardest things that, like, we will have to face in our life.
Yeah. It's insane. I'm glad we're over it. But we're talking about comedy.
Let's move on.
Yeah, I want to talk about, and now going back from where we were, talking about, like, your first show or the beginning of performing, whether it be, I want to hear about improv and stand-up, just performing for Ridiculum in general. Like, what was that? Because I believe, did you perform in the first stand-up show, or did it take you a little bit?
No, so I was the host of the first stand-up show.
That's right, you hosted with Jack Brenner.
One of, like, 5 hosts.
Yeah.
Because, so the issue with stand-up for me was it was always Friday afternoons, and I loved to go to a darty. I love day drinking.
Mm-hmm.
Day drinking does not love me. I am so sick afterwards. But, like, I loved a good darty, and it was always conflicting times. So, like, one day I was like, okay, I didn't have a party to go to, and I, like, ran to stand up, and I was like, Andrew, I have a set to perform. And I, like, off the cuff performed a set for him, and he was like, okay, do you have any of that written down? And I was like, no, why would I? And he was like, you kind of need to, like, practice more than just, like, screaming at me your set for 20 minutes. And I was like, oh, yeah, you know what? You're right. And he's like, but you're funny. I'll let you host. And I was like, oh, thank you so much. So then I began hosting, and after that, I was like, this is something that I really want to do. So I started, like, instead of going to a party, I would go to stand-up practice because it was so much more fun. And really, I have, like, such a deep love for stand-up because, so that I was, like, president of stand-up.
Yes, you were. You were the last unofficial one.
Yes, last unofficial one.
Yeah.
And it was kind of just, like, it was something that was, like, all mine, and, like, I loved working through jokes with people.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I just thought it was, like, such a fun, like, let me pick your brain about this. Like, let's really iron this out. I thought it was so fun. But I remember my first stand-up show, I was so much more nervous than I was for improv, because improv, it's like, okay, it's improv. You can't really prep. Like, you know, we do in practices, we run these games through, but, like, you have no idea what you're getting into.
Mm-hmm.
For stand-up, it's like you memorize your set and then you perform it, and if it's not perfect, then you're going to hate yourself afterwards.
Yeah, the criticism falls almost entirely on you. Like, maybe 1% the audience wasn't having a good day, but every other 99%, it's like, you wrote this to be funny. This should be funny.
Yeah, and, like, it's one of those things, like, you can't even hear the laughter when it's happening, and, like,
Yeah.
you're up there, and you're like, oh, my God, I just missed a joke. Oops. No one's laughing. Everyone's laughing, and it is, like, so nerve-wracking and honestly so vulnerable. Like, I think that's part of what I loved about it was, like, okay, I'm going to go out there and be really raw and authentic, and, like, people are going to judge me, but, like, I want them to, and I want them to laugh at what I'm saying. But it's so much scarier than improv.
Yeah.
But I think improv made me a much better stand-up comedian.
Absolutely. It's I was talking to Kevin today about it, is like of a lot of the comedy clubs that, like, we have contact with, that we've talked to.
Mm-hmm.
Not a lot of, like, we are a rare breed of a comedy club as far as I can tell from the people that we know of. Like, a lot of the comedy clubs we know are improv comedy clubs. Like, there exist stand-up comedians on other campuses, but honestly they're on their own. As far as I know, there's not as much of a stand-up club in the areas or people that we've talked to. So it is nice to have the 1-2 punch of, you could do either or, but if you do both, you'll be better at both, and they complement each other.
Yeah.
It's like, in my mind, like what you just said, with stand-up, you have improv backing you up, because if you do mess up, you can pick yourself back up. Whereas in improv, as much as you might be a good performer, being able to formulate the joke, having, as much as jokes exist differently in an improv scene, like, you have that format, you have the cadence of being able to do it because you've participated in stand-up before. The compliments of each other, I think, is really great, and I love that about our club.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I'm like, I get on Kevin's ass. Well, I used to get on Kevin's ass so much about this because I was like, you are going to be such a better stand-up comedian if you do improv comedy. He still hasn't listened to me, and I'm going to yell at him this weekend about it.
He hasn't.
Because I am so dead set on this that you just being around comedy naturally makes you a better comedian. Like, I know for myself, whenever I'm, like, around all of you, I'm just funnier.
You're right. Like, at parties or at, like, at parties, the only other exception for this is, like, my friend circle. But that's also because in my friend circle, my need to want to make people laugh still exists. But other than that, in other circles, it's not as funny, or I don't feel as funny, because it's like, I'm not around the people that I know will understand that I'm doing a bit, that I'm telling a joke. And even if you don't laugh, guys, like, I know you know what I'm doing. Like, it's all a comedy circle. You're right. Like, the comedy circle, everyone emphasizes each other in terms of laughing. And yeah, I mean, I agree. You got to get on Kevin's ass. You got to let him know.
Yeah, no, that reminds me. I will do it. But I think it's so much like being around people that can, like, yes and you. And that's like the big hit of improv is yes and just, like, I mean, like, I feel like this is why all of these conversations that you have flow so well, is because everyone can just yes and you.
Yeah, what's really exciting, like, I can't say that so in high school I did a podcast where I would have guests on. One semester didn't have guests as much as this, obviously. But on that podcast I would have guests on, but like they were classmates, or some of them were even teachers, and that's intimidating. Every single interview so far that I've done for this show, it's like, I know you exist in the realm that I exist in, or at one point did in your life. So I'm not uncomfortable, and I know you're going to pick this up. I mean, even if, like, because, speaking with, I guess a good example, Kevin exclusively works in stand-up in terms of Ridiculum, has done improv a few times and has the skills to do improv. He is a good improviser, despite the fact that he doesn't do improv. But even then, like, it's not just like, oh, well, I like talking to improvisers. Comedians in general understand each other in a very weird way. It's a weird, like, I don't know, telepathy thing where it's like, if you tell me you're a comedian, I immediately know how to talk to you for the rest of the night.
Yeah.
Or at least I immediately know how to start picking up on how I should talk to you, because it's just so much easier. It's so much easier than talking to regular people.
I know. And like, just like what you were saying about bits, like when I'm a like little freak about something and I'm like, this is funny, right? And people are like, no, just like, why are you doing that? Where like, if I was around someone like you or anyone else who was in Ridiculum, they would be like, oh, yeah, like, let me add to this.
Yes.
And it's just like, I know for myself, I've always felt like kind of, and I think a lot of people feel this way, like, who are comedians now, felt like this pressure to be the funniest person in the room because that was like your role in the friend group. I'm the funny one, or like whatever. And being around a bunch of funny people and not having to have that role of, oh, I'm the funny one, is so refreshing and so nice. Because it's like, we can all just riff off of each other. I never laugh as hard as I do when I'm around all of these people. And it's like, literally, I know I'm going to leave this weekend and my stomach's going to hurt because I laugh so hard.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, thinking about like, and it's, you would expect, because I think maybe the base idea, or like the assumed idea of like a bunch of comedians in a room, they've got to be trying to one-up each other. Like, yeah, sometimes. But for the most part, especially the ones that, like, this is why specifically I like talking to my friends, the comedians, not just comedians, because if there's the littlest hint of connection, we're not going to be trying to one-up each other. And if we are, like, it's I don't know how to explain it, but like, it's not going to be as messy as you think it's going to be. I promise.
It's just to escalate the bit. If there's one-upping, it's just, oh, let me take this bit even further.
Yeah.
Like, let's see how crazy we can get this.
And that might be a different experience for like people in other comedy circles, but in the very bubbled comedy circle I've existed in so far in my life, it's not the case. Like, for the most part, it's pretty supportive. It's pretty yes-anding. Like, it's pretty well done. And I that's the part that I really enjoy about it too. The idea that I can walk into a practice, or a party, or even pre-show, say a dumb thing and either get a laugh or an elevation of it. I mean, I walk into my apartment every night and Owen's there and I'm like, okay, I'm going to say some dumb shit and we're going to laugh about it for 15 minutes. Like, being around those specific people, it is really nice, which is why I'm really excited for this weekend. Context, it's homecoming weekend. That's why Siobhan's here. It's why a lot of other comedians are here. I'm excited to also record 2 more interviews tomorrow. I'm excited for that. But yeah, so kind of moving along, around the end of my freshman year, your junior year, the opportunity for an executive position occurs, and you take it, or at least you apply. What I want to know, like, did you have? Because I can't imagine, unless I'm totally wrong, I can't imagine you went into the comedy club like, one day I'm gonna be the vice president of this comedy club.
No.
What about it? Did someone approach you? Like, I'm so very curious about how because like when I joined, as a person in general, had the least confidence ever in my life, and then eventually leading myself to lead the club as the president. I'm so incredibly curious about how that train of thought occurs for people, and how that confidence or just willingness to support a club in a certain way eventually gets there.
I would say, so I first got the idea in my head around Halloween of my junior year. So I had been in the club for about a month.
It's kind of early, yeah.
Yeah, no, like crazy early. This is also the same party that I told Jacob that I think he's medium on women.
Yes, we'll get to that.
Yes.
I don't have a question for it, but we will. I was like, we got to talk about this.
I can't come on and not include it.
Absolutely.
But so at that party, I made a joke because Patrick was talking, who was president while I was vice president.
Mm-hmm.
He was talking about how he's like the presumptive president of the club. And I was like, you know what? Like, I'm going to challenge you. I'm going to be like your co-president or something.
Yes,
like,
the co-president.
I'm going to do that.
Yes.
And they were all like, yeah, okay, bet. Like, you're going to be in this club for like maybe a month longer. And I was like, yeah, probably. And then as like time progressed and I like got so involved and even like in some certain aspects, like served as like a mentor to some people, like really took some people under my wing and just like kind of grew as a comedian and like just grew to love the club so much that when it was time to apply for exec, I was like, no, so I'm going to be vice president.
Yeah.
And they were all like, well, yeah, like, sure. And that's kind of how I became vice president. And also because no one else applied for vice president.
No.
So kind of got it by default, but I didn't make a play for Patrick's presidency. I talked about it, but I never actually made the play. And some misconceptions will say that I tried to overthrow him. I did not.
I would argue that you kept him in fear for his entire presidency, and that allowed you to make the decision.
Oh, yeah. No, like... And you're talking to Pat tomorrow, right?
Yeah, I'm talking to Pat tomorrow.
He's going to say the complete opposite and, like, pull up this little audio clip for him because he lived in fear of me, and I ran that shit.
Just going to mark this time code 39.
Yes.
I'm going to play this for him tomorrow.
Yes. He lived in fear of me, so I took all the reins. But, no, I will say we had a very fun dynamic because no one was ever really expecting me to get as involved as I did. I think a lot of people were like, okay, she's going to be vice president. Like, can she handle it? Like, and there were some conversations, like not conversations saying like, Siobhan, like, can you handle this? Like, are you going to be okay? But like, I know like at some points, like Andrew was like to me, he's like, you understand, like, you're going to be vice president of this club. And I was like, yeah, I do.
That's hilarious that Andrew pulled you aside for, like, you're running this country, Siobhan.
Yeah, no, literally.
You understand the responsibility?
Yeah, and I was like, fuck off, it's an improv club. I was like, a potato could run this, which is very wrong, and I'm sure you feel this.
Absolutely.
As a former vice president
Former
and
vice president,
now
the
president.
Yeah.
It is so much more work than, like, you would expect, and I learned that very quickly, and I was definitely, like, Patrick would lead practice. I'd help him, of course, but, like, that's where he kind of shined, and I would do a lot of the background stuff. Besides go to those stupid meetings for...
You didn't like the Rise sessions?
Oh, no, I was never going to them, and, like, every once in a while, Pat would be like, we have a Rise session, like, I can't make it, can someone go? And I was like, absolutely not. But, like, I would make the set list, and when we were going to Georgetown, Patrick coordinated with the people at Georgetown, but then I found us housing and stuff, and I think we did a really good job of like having the balance of like splitting up work, and like I think I was very good at making set lists, and I really enjoyed making set lists, so I was happy to do it.
Yeah, I was gonna ask what was like your favorite administrative executive like priority, and that was like your favorite thing to do, like your favorite responsibility kind of?
I would say like as I loved running practices too because I thought they were just so much fun, but like I did really like making the shows because it was like, okay, figure out what's the best to start on, what's the best in the middle, what's to end, where do people shine, and it was like definitely made me go into practice and like really be an observer and be like, Jacob is so good at this game. Like, we have to have him in this. Yeah.
I'm very good at this game.
Note how I didn't specify a game.
There might not be a game.
There is not.
No.
Unfortunately.
I'm just good at standing there.
You're just really good at every game.
Yeah. I'm jack of all trades, master of none. Yeah.
Yeah. No. But, like, it was definitely, like, I think it helped better me as a comedian because I was watching everyone and trying to figure out where, like, because obviously we want the show to go super well, and just figuring out where like people fit in best. And I thought it was really fun. And then of course like rest of exec would what's the word for
give input?
give input, but confirm it.
Confirm
That's the
it.
word.
There you
Confirm,
go.
confirm, confirm.
Confirmed that it's confirmed.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. So yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, it's you talk about specifically the observing part. I have observed so much more in like the last two. Like it is so nice. Sometimes I do, like, I love running this club. I love being someone who can give people notes. I love knowing so much about improv. Sometimes I do miss those first few months where I was like, this is fun.
Yeah.
And like not to disparage anyone that's new and like doesn't have an exact, but like that was a fun freedom. So it is very noticeable, the change of like, I am paying attention to so many things in practice now.
No, absolutely. Because, like, you go from just being like, oh, willy-nilly, like, let me just have fun. Let me just think whatever I think off the top of my head. But then when you get into an exec role, you have to, like, you yourself have to, like, follow the rules of the game. Like, okay, like, make sure you're yes-anding people. Don't start a scene with a question. Don't do this. Don't do that. You know, it's, like, a little bit more pressure because now you're, like, the person that people are looking up to.
Yeah.
But I do think it, like, does make you a stronger comedian because you're watching, like, and there's such a, like, rawness to people who have no idea what they're doing.
Yeah.
Like, when they first come into the club, like, and they make just such a funny joke or something, and it's like, oh, yeah, like, no, you're really funny, and you have no idea, that that's good improv, but, like, it is.
Yeah, definitely.
So it's like a cool position to be in when you're in power. I love being in power.
Being in power is really fun.
I am so power hungry.
Speaking of, I want to, before we move on from this, talking about exec positions and also your unofficial role, technically, as the stand-up director when you became vice president as well. I mean, what was the respect? I mean, you talked about already, like, you really enjoy workshopping jokes with people, which we'll be doing soon to prepare for the alumni stand-up show.
I'm so excited.
But, like, I guess speak on that for a little bit too, because you know it's very different. As like I've led like maybe 2 or 3 stand-up meetings when Kevin wasn't there, so I've seen that perspective. But like it's very different in terms of like giving notes in improv and giving notes on a set for someone for a show. Like talk on that for a little bit.
Yeah, so like stand-up is it's so much different than improv because it's kind of like what we do is we sit down. And it's like, anyone got a joke to tell? And it's like, sometimes there's radio silence. And it's like learning what you do in that. Because it's not like, just call it quits on the practice. No one has any jokes to tell. It's like, okay, well, let's all talk about something weird. Like, what's weird that's going on in your life right now? Like, tell me. And it's like a big role of the stand-up director is to kind of get that out of people. Like, figure out something that can be so mundane in their life. And pull it out of them and find something funny with it. So that part I really enjoyed because there was just a lot of like chit-chatting about silly things and then the sudden realization of, oh no, this makes like a really great stand-up set. So that was super cool. I think also like something that I really loved was seeing this like from a person like as an upperclassman and as a person with like an executive role, but specifically in stand-up, this is the one time that I will shout out Kevin. It was so much fun to see him grow specifically from the beginning of his freshman year to the end. And for those that don't know, after that, he became stand-up director. It was so fun to be a part of that and just see someone like who came into the club with, I don't know how much experience he had, but like he was super eager and like really ready to go with jokes and like to see them grow, that then by the end of the year I could be like, hey, I think you can run this.
Yeah. I spoke to him like a few weeks ago. He, as far as I've heard from him, he didn't have a ton of experience. He just had a lot of aspiration for doing it. And you're right. It was very fascinating. It's the way that like, it's also like the way that we felt when like Charlie came into the club of like, oh, okay, Charlie's a little different. He did do improv a little bit before, but even then it's like, you are new, and I am already seeing you grow at a rate faster than I ever have, and it's fun to see. I can't say that there was ever a moment of like, well, I'm well, I'm not him. That sucks. It's just so fun to watch that occur.
Yeah.
And it's especially going to be fun to think about that too if like he ends up succeeding as far as he wants to. I'm going to be so excited to watch a Kevin Keane Netflix special and go, yeah, I watched that guy when he sucked ass.
Oh, I can't wait for all of like the press that I'm gonna do and be
yeah.
like, I knew Kevin Keane when.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh my god, I'm gonna drag him through the mud. Just kidding. But no, I'm so excited because I think he's one of those people that like can actually do it, and I'm like really excited to be part of that journey, like to have been a part of that journey.
Yeah, that's super cool. I'm thinking we covered your comedy journey, but is there anything we left out? Any other notes about comedy journey specifically before I move on to a few other pointed questions?
No, not really.
Yeah, I loved hearing the perspective of exec too. That was especially fun because so far it's been from the perspective of people I'm on exec with, and so like I can kind of see how that was been looking, but it's fun to hear from that too, especially because like from preceding exec as well, knowing that like, oh, when I wasn't in this position of even thinking that I would want to lead the club in any way, Siobhan was doing this. Siobhan, it's crazy because you even talk about like talking about, oh, can anyone fill in for Rise session? Just messages like that or anything like that happening behind the scenes. So much more was happening. You're right. Like as much as I was really passionate about it and I didn't necessarily go, it's a comedy club, but like in my mind, I was like, I could probably do it. It's like, it's a comedy club.
Yeah, it's funny.
And there's so much more. So it was very interesting to hear that perspective. I want to ask specifically about developing friendships in a comedy club specifically. Like, can you speak on, like, because of the number of people that, like, you're now friends with, one of which you are dating, actually, tell me, like, what's that like? Just because, like, a number of the people that you're friends with now and are close to now, let me know if I'm wrong, but, like, a good number of them you met because of Ridiculum. You interacted with because of Ridiculum. Like, it just, I mean, either what that means to you, what that was like, specifically doing that, because I'm sure you, like, had friends before Ridiculum, and then you had this perspective of making friends specifically in a new setting. What was that like for you?
So much fun, and, like, so much of why I love Ridiculum is because of the friendships that I made. And it's just silly to me that, like, some of my best friends, like Patrick and Miguel, I did not know before my junior year.
That's insane.
And now they're, like, two of my closest friends.
Yeah.
And I think it's just so funny because it's, like, comedy is such a place, like, where you laugh and have fun, and then it's, like, how can you not hang out outside of it? Like, if you have so much fun with these people, like, during it, I think it's, like, one of the most rewarding parts of it is that, like, I was able to form such a deep connection with these people, like, both in comedy and outside of it, and I think being friends outside of it made our comedy so much stronger. I also will say, like, it was so fun. Like, Jacob, you won't know about this because you were a freshman when we were all upperclassmen, but, like, after improv, we would walk back to West Campus, and it would be like, well, anyone want to hang out? And in my apartment in Gallon, we would have, in Gallon, they have, like, round dining room tables, and we had one of those, and we had, like, the meeting of the round table where we would all just, like, sit and gossip and talk about life, and it was so much fun, and it was, like, for my junior year, like, I'd really only see them, like, every once in a while on weekends, but, like, Sundays and Wednesdays, like, you could guarantee we were going back to my apartment, and we were chit-chatting for hours. So that was super fun, and just, like, getting to know them, like, outside of comedy was cool, like, understanding them as people and, like, how that then, like, reflected in their comedy was just so cool, and, like, I'm so grateful for it. And, like Jacob said, like, I'm dating a person who I met in Ridiculum, and it's one so the funny thing that everyone always asks me is, like, how can you watch him do, like, improv comedy and not get the ick?
Yeah, how can you watch him be a pirate scratching his butt ordering beer? Like, how can you watch him be a weird hang glider instructor?
And a little part of me dies. How can I watch him make out with Nate on stage and not get the ick?
Yeah.
That one actually turned me on. Thank you so much. No, but it's, like, so funny because it's like, yeah, no, I absolutely do get the ick, but, like, that's part of why I love this person is because, like, they're so raw and authentically themselves that they can, like, get out on stage and, like, perform, can be a pirate itching their ass.
Yeah.
Like, that they can do that. And it, like, definitely made me a better comedian and, like, pushed me outside of my boundaries because, like, it's funny when you get up and embarrass yourself. Like, it's fine. No one cares. Like, just be
no
yourself.
one gives a shit. No one
Yeah, like, your whole goal is to make people laugh, and it's not embarrassing. It's funny.
I don't think if I had told myself in high school, even as like a senior in high school, it'd be like your whole fucking thing in college is going to be to do whatever you can to make an audience laugh.
Yeah.
I would have been like, why?
Yeah.
Why would I? That sounds scary. Why? Also, that sounds lame. Why would I do that? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's insane that the trajectory has changed dramatically.
Oh, yeah.
It's
absolutely.
insane. Yeah. I want to ask about. Or I guess we're close to the end of the episode, so we can get back to the real matter at hand. Jacob used to be medium on women.
So, and this is...
I don't even remember how it begun. I really can't say.
Oh, I do.
Okay, awesome.
And this is, like, one of my favorite things, especially now in, like, hindsight, seeing, like, what Jacob has developed into. Because I will say now, Jacob is not medium on women.
No.
He's leans more towards pro.
I am so high on women.
So high on
I'm
women.
high on one woman. One
Mm-hmm.
woman. Absolutely.
Yeah,
There's just one.
okay.
I'm high.
Okay.
I'm above the roof. Go ahead.
Yeah. But I feel like Jacob, not like meaning this in a diss way in any way, but
No,
like
go ahead. Talk about Jacob
Yeah.
freshman year. He was.
he just was so excited, but so immature. And I
Yeah.
think comes just like from being an upperclassman and seeing a freshman come in, and like it was the only space that I was really interacting with freshmen that much. So I was just like, oh my God, this kid is so immature, and he was so excited to be a part of it, which I loved, but also was like, what the fuck?
Excited in the way that, I mean, I don't know where I'm about to hear, and I'm ready, but like from my perspective, especially talking about this joke of medium on women, like interrupted women constantly because I was so excited about things.
Yes, that is, and like that is, I think Jacob to a T is that he just gets so excited about things that like if you forget social manners, it's not on it's not on purpose.
Yes.
It's because you're so excited.
Yeah.
But so he was so excited he'd interrupt women, and then he loved Andrew. He loved Andrew so much.
Yeah.
And I was just like, Jill and I, we like said to each other, like kind of at the exact same moment, we were like, we think he might be medium on women. We don't think he hates women. Like, we want to make it very clear he does not hate women.
Yeah.
But we don't think he's pro them.
Yeah, I remember at a practice, the first time I remember it, if you told me this at the Halloween party, I don't remember.
Yeah.
I remember a practice where it was like a joke made or something, and then you were like, Jacob, you hate women. I was like, I don't hate them. And then maybe Owen or someone, maybe you again was like, yeah, but you don't love them.
Yeah.
Something along the lines of that, and that's where medium, right in the middle of the road on women, became a thing.
And I will say, like, for freshmen, like, having an upperclassman, like, woman say that to them,
Terrifying.
that would have been terrifying.
It
but
was.
you handled it so well.
I was like, it was terrifying because at first, and then I was like, oh, well, there's a bit now. And possibly even at that point, change my trajectory of like, well, this is a bit. I'm going to make sure the rest of my life possibly reflects the opposite. It didn't happen that quick, but yeah. But like, well, because in general, even in the, like, I was fully aware of the fact that Siobhan and I did comedy for the same amount of time up until she graduated, and then has not been able to touch comedy as much except for like the alumni improv show. Yeah. But I was very aware that we were, in terms of the comedy club, rather on the same level, and yet that's still a junior. And so and hearing that, and then like it is terrifying. But I don't want to make you feel bad for a joke that has lasted so long and has been super, super funny.
Yeah.
Because I was terrified, but I was also like, well, people like this. That was also one of my first, I think, instances of realizing this joke is made at my detriment, possibly even at the detriment of my reputation. But people are having fun with it. The people that I care about specifically. Yes. I was like, maybe not in a show. And then I made the conscious choice to be the boss of women in my first improv scene. I was a girl boss, if you remember.
Boss. Yeah.
And I chose for that to mean I was the boss of all girls. Further solidifying this narrative that Siobhan had started for us.
But your bounce back was incredible.
Okay, that's good. That's
yeah.
good to know.
No, I will say, and like, I think Jacob handled this joke as best as he could. Maybe he shouldn't have been the boss of girls, but it's funny. We'll just move past that. But it's so fun to think about. Like, that was my reflection upon Jacob now, like back then, and my reflection upon Jacob now is like one of my very good friends who I'm spending my Friday evening just chatting to on a podcast and having such a baller time.
Yeah. Thank you, by the way, for being here.
Oh my God. No, I was so excited when you invited me on because A, I love just chit-chatting with you, but B, like, I think this is so fun and I love talking about comedy. I miss it so much.
I'm excited for you and a bunch of other people to get back to it. I mean, I hate that only twice an academic year is going to be the instance, at least so far. And any of the alumni who know me, I encourage anyone in general to please go find some sort of a comedy space if you have the ability to after you've left college. It'll do so much for you. Siobhan, you got to find some sort of an outlet.
No,
I know you need it.
I know, but like, all right.
Unless you're doing okay. Unless you're doing all right.
I'm not.
Oh, okay.
I'm totally not.
Okay.
Guys, being an adult sucks. But I think there is like the potential because I said in college I was never going to do improv comedy. Here I am now still talking about my time doing improv comedy. I do think there could be like the potential that like in a few years I move to a new city and I'm like, hey, I need to make friends. Let me join an improv troupe.
Yeah.
But I think what has been a good comedy outlet is that like when I am together with everyone, it's like we talk about making content. We talk about the things that we do and like we have fun just being together. So I think that is a good comedy outlet. Obviously, I would like to have that all the time or at least twice a week or 3 times a week like I had in college.
Semi-consistent.
Yeah. But we'll see. I mean, like, I don't think my comedy journey is done.
That's good.
I think there's definitely places that I can explore it. And I don't know, like, maybe even if Andrew or Kevin makes it big or you, honestly, yeah.
Who knows?
If you make it big, I'll just ride your coattails to the very end,
I'll be a comedic podcaster. That'll be my thing. This is what's going to bring me to success. Absolutely. This little thing. I definitely, in general, but like specifically the people that I know loved comedy, eventually get back to it.
Yeah.
It's going to take a little bit. I'm terrified of that reality. I'm terrified to leave Ridiculum and for it to take longer than I'm expecting it to for me to get back to it. But I'm just going to have to deal with that reality until I eventually get back to it. I need to. But yeah, absolutely. Eventually get back to that outlet. Like, don't pressure yourself and being like, well, if I don't do it in the next 3 months, then I'm a failure. Like, you just eventually get back there, which is, I think, what I'm going to say to all of these alumni that I'm going to have on the show of like, you need to because you liked it.
Yeah.
Which if you're not able to now, that's fine. Just get to it eventually because it's gonna feel so good. I can also imagine like it's probably gonna feel good after like there's maybe a little bit of a hiatus you've had with comedy.
Yeah.
Getting back to it is gonna be like, oh, I've missed you, old friend.
Yeah, no, definitely. And we're all trying to like figure out now. Patrick and Miguel are moving to DC, where
that's right.
Andrew is.
There's a bit of a move happening.
Yeah,
there's moves,
and like we're kind of all closing in on like being close to each other, and like we've talked about since before graduation, we're like, okay, we're gonna make some sort of content together, and we're gonna have like so much fun doing it. And
we've been doing that.
Really close to
content, but like specifically like comedy stuff. That's been happening. I think it just needs to keep consistently happening.
Yeah, and with like more of us moving closer to each other, and this is my like sell to Jacob move to DC after graduation.
I'm gonna at least try to be close.
Okay, all right, we'll handle that.
I'll try.
Trisha's from Maryland.
Yeah, she's from. That's why I'm gonna try to be close.
Oh my God, Jacob totally moved to DC.
I need to attempt it. Although I do like the idea of being around in Philly too, because comedy sports is here, and I'd love to maybe spend time there. So we'll see. But yeah, no, I love the moves that are being made of like, let's all converge once more.
Yes,
a Ridiculum alumni will meet again.
So stay tuned for all that's to come. Maybe
I'm excited.
We'll have something to promote on the podcast at some point.
If that occurs and there's like a new comedy troupe and I'll have all of you back on. It'd be super cool to have that. Well, thanks for talking.
Thanks for having me.
This was super fun. That's our show. I hope you enjoyed listening. I sure enjoyed the conversation. I'd like to say thank you to Andrew Mister for the use of this podcast theme song, Cruisin'. Thank you to Siobhan for coming. Siobhan couldn't keep a straight face with that. I can't wait to say it when he's here.
Oh my God, I'm not going to tell him that it's happening.
No, please don't. I mean, he listens, so he knows it's coming.
Shit, yeah.
But yeah, and thank you to Siobhan for being on the show. Thank you so much for coming.
Oh my God, thank you.
My name is Jacob Marscola, reminding you to laugh, especially when it's funny.